just finished a mile hike. You're at the top of the waterfall and look up in the sky, look at the world around you and say, recite Psalm 19:1, the heavens are telling of the glory of God. Guys, everything around us, the birds singing, the babbling, river, the rush of the waterfall, all of this is speaking about God.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Maven Parent Podcast. This is part 2 in a 2-part series that we're doing on the question or statement that it's not enough for our kids to believe in God. Now, we started to unpack this in the first podcast, so make sure you go back and listen to that one first, because now we're going to get into really the more practical. But in the first podcast, we talked about the difference between belief, mere belief, and knowledge. And we talked about 3 different aspects of belief: the content of beliefs, that they need to be true, that our beliefs need to be true. So content, the strength of our beliefs, that we need justification for those beliefs to really stick. And then the third thing, that the centrality of our beliefs, that we need kind of a worldview approach when we think about our beliefs. And we talked about the topic of origin and how we help our kids to see the centrality of how important it is to know that God exists, that it's not enough to just say, oh yeah, God exists, but not have reasons behind that.
Yeah. And I think that stuff is so important to think about, because it will motivate us. It should motivate us to teach our kids about God, but to go much deeper, to not be satisfied and think your kid's okay if they say, yeah, I believe in God. No, we want to make sure they have some rich content in the term God. Okay, who is God? What is God like? What are his characteristics? What are his attributes? Right? Mm-hmm. Then we need to strengthen that belief. So it's not, yeah, I believe in God, but it's, no, I believe in God. And not only do I believe in God, I know that God is real because I have reasons and evidence. And so that understanding of the nature of belief and how it differs from knowledge and how they're related should motivate us to say, okay, this is a topic we've got to spend some time on with our kids.
Yes. And we talked about how, we've talked many times about how we can learn along with our kids. So if you're sitting there thinking, I'm not sure I have a lot of that knowledge, that's okay. You can work on it too with your kids. But okay, Brett, so there's sometimes is this idea in the Christian faith that this word faith means something maybe different than what it means biblically. Oftentimes faith is thought of as blind. So when you have faith, it means you don't have good reasons to believe something, but you just have faith. You
just believe it anyway.
Yeah.
Or in spite of. Maybe the evidence is against you. Science is against you. And so, you know what? You take a leap of faith.
Yeah, you're seeing things out in the world. You're seeing science advances. But no. I believe in God and I believe in the Bible. But
in the way when it comes to God in particular, the way I often hear it from people is, well, you can't prove that God exists. Mm-hmm. Therefore, it takes faith.
Yes.
And that just is a misunderstanding of biblical faith.
Yeah. So thinking of that, like in Paul's letter to the Roman church in Romans 1, I guess 19, we could start there. But Paul addresses this idea of evidence in God, and especially to an unbelieving world. And he says in verse 19, because that which is known about God is evident within them, talking about people. For God made it evident to them. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood through what has been made, so that they are without excuse.
Yeah. I mean, that tells us right there that one of the ways that God communicates to us about himself and about his very existence is through the natural world. And so, yes, we as Christians believe that God communicates through his word, but we also believe that he communicates through his word, that the natural world around us.
You said through his word.
The second time?
Yeah.
Oh.
Through his world.
And thirdly, he communicates through his world. His word, and his world. No, he communicates through his word and his world. Mm-hmm. And this is the natural world around us. This is creation. This is the design, the order, the complexity that we see all around us. And as we advance scientifically, we are just getting more and more evidence for God's existence. We see things from the biological aspects, from the molecular level, from DNA in human beings. All of these things end up being pointers back to God. So this tells us that evidence is all around us. Mm-hmm. And so, and it's overwhelming evidence that we are without excuse. Nobody has an excuse to deny God's existence. Mm-hmm. This is echoed in Psalm 19:1. The heavens are telling of the glory of God, and their expanse is declaring the work of his hands. Day to day pours forth speech, and night to night reveals knowledge. So the heavens declare the glory of God, the world around us. Day and night, we have plenty of evidence that God is real. And so we can give that evidence. You look at Paul in Acts 17, and he goes to the Jews first at the beginning of Acts 17. He reasons, it says he gives evidence, and it says people are persuaded. The Holy Spirit can use the evidence that's all around us to persuade people of his existence, and also the evidence for Jesus. And later on, Paul goes and talks to the Greeks in Athens, and he's engaging with them about this unknown God. So I think biblically speaking, and of course, 1 Peter 3:15 tells us we're to give a reason for the hope that is in us. So there's a very strong case scripturally that we are to give evidence.
Yeah, it reminds me of the episode we did recently on teaching our kids theology. And we talked about part of teaching our kids theology is studying and being in creation. Mm-hmm. And that's often, I think, not talked about. You don't hear that a lot. But Paul's clear that we can see evidence of God's existence and learn about him from creation. And so, yeah, it can be that we're without excuse in believing in him, but it also gives us justification, right? What we were talking about earlier. This
strengthens our beliefs. Mm-hmm. And this strengthens our kids' beliefs. This is why apologetics, right? Apologia, that's where we get the word apologetics. It's making a defense, or it's giving reasons for the hope that we put in Christ. And that is, I think, absolutely essential as we try to disciple our kids. Mm-hmm. It's not like an optional thing. It's not like, oh, my kid's interested in that, so I'll give him some of that. Or my kid has some tough questions. No, this should be a regular part. It should just be woven into our discipleship.
Yes, and too, starting when they're young. This kind of, even the way we talk about faith and talk about God's existence, even when they're young, we can, 3 or 4 years old, when we are outside, when we are in creation, being purposeful about pointing back to God made this. This is how we know that there is a God, because look at all of this beauty around, things like that. So even how we talk about our faith when they're little, we can posture it in a way that is complementary to what we're talking about here.
Yeah, and this is one thing I think I mentioned in the part one, the podcast earlier on this topic. I talked about how students often respond to the atheist role play with falling back to their experience. We don't talk in cognitive terms enough. Think about how you talk to your kids about faith and how other Christians talk about faith. It's often in the language of relationship and feelings and emotions. And that is, of course, that's an important aspect, but it's not the only aspect. We are to love God with heart, soul, and mind. So we should also be talking about God in intellectual terms and helping to raise the bar intellectually for our kids. So we want to also have a cognitive approach. We want to be talking about the evidence and the logic of God and things like that. So
yeah, and I'm just thinking about how we try to do this with the kids all the time. And one of my favorite things that you said to the kids one time, and it stuck with me, is when we were in Colorado one time and we were going to the national park, the Garden of the Gods in Colorado Springs. And you said it's not the Garden of the Gods, it's the Garden of the one true God. And so you started calling it that, the Garden of the one true God. And I love that because it just, as we went now to the national park, I kept thinking, oh yeah, this is the Garden of the one true God. It's not the Garden of the Gods. We know who made this thing. And we'll watch nature shows with the kids, and, evolutionary comments will be made, and you'll stop and you'll talk about, now, do you notice how they explain that, but they're assuming these things about it? And just how you talk about faith and how we talk about creation, even in those things, we can, at a young age, just turn our posture towards, we don't have to be, afraid to study these things or look at these things, but also just that we have a proper view of them too. Anyway,
yeah.
It made me think
I think that's a good kind of transition, because I think when it comes to this topic, we start talking about evidence and we start talking about the intellectual side of faith, that can be intimidating to a lot of parents.
Yeah.
Because frankly, the American church for a very long time has been very anti-intellectual. And so we haven't gotten the training ourselves. So this can be a little intimidating for parents who feel like, okay, yeah, you guys can do that. You've had certain training. That's not me. I don't have that kind of knowledge. And so how am I I don't know some sophisticated argument for God's existence. So I want to say a couple things on that. Number one, and I think you've already mentioned that, learn with your kids. It's okay. It's all right if you don't know everything. You're not omniscient. I'm not omniscient. You can grow, and we should always have that idea that all of life will be growing in our knowledge. In fact, for the rest of eternity, we'll be growing in our knowledge of who God is and exploring this infinite God. So there's going to be no end to our exploring of God and our growth in our knowledge of Him. So that's okay. But then number two, find ways to grow yourself. And as you grow, you will be stretched, but then you have to figure out how to translate it for your kids. Yeah. And so
that's why we're going to point to some resources in this podcast, because we realize along the way, as we've grown, there's lots of books and resources we've used. So that's why I think hopefully you'll be encouraged, especially towards the end. We're going to link in the show notes to some resources that will help us grow with our kids. Yeah,
there's some practical stuff we want to get to. But before we get to that, I want to just sketch out for everyone a basic argument for God's existence and talk about kind of an approach that is just kind of common sense. Because that's always been my passion for this, for apologetics or the intellectual side of faith, is that we translate this stuff and make it accessible to everyone. So you don't feel like you have to have some graduate degree, to study this stuff. And so when it comes to arguments for God's existence, I think one of the most powerful arguments is what's called the Kalam cosmological argument. Now, someone might be intimidated just by the name, right? Oh my gosh, Kalam cosmological argument. All right, don't be intimidated. It simply points to a feature of the world. That's what cosmological arguments do. Cosmos meaning world or universe. Cosmological arguments just point to features of the world or the universe that then point to God. And so I want to take this in a very common sense approach. In fact, I think with some of these arguments for God's existence, you start with an obvious truth that pretty much no one's going to deny. That's your starting point. Okay, here's an obvious truth. And from this obvious truth, we're going to give reasons why we think this obvious truth points to God's existence.
That would be what Romans 1:19 is talking about, right? So you're going to give us an obvious thing, meaning we can all see this.
Yeah, it should become evident to us, right? So I've got a sophisticated chart here. It's a piece of paper and a Sharpie marker, but we'll have to work on our graphics for future podcasts so we can have someone animate this. The piece of paper, right, the top of the piece of paper, it says the universe exists. Now, I hope that's an obvious truth. If your kid denies that the universe exists, you're like, what do I do? Well, you probably send them to therapy. I mean, that's probably what they need. They don't need an argument. They need counseling. But look, everyone's going to
acknowledge that the universe we live in exists.
Yeah, okay. So the universe exists. All right, now, what this is going to do is it's going to lead us into a series of dilemmas. Okay? They're called exhaustive dilemmas, meaning there's only two choices. There's not like some third choice we're missing here. Okay. All right, if the universe exists, it either has no beginning, I'm going to write this down, or it has you guessed it, a beginning. Okay, so there it goes. There's the graphic. The universe exists. You have two choices. Either it has no beginning or it has a beginning. If it has no beginning, that means it's always existed. It's eternal. If it has a beginning, then what we're going to do is ask, okay, is that beginning uncaused or is it caused? All right, there's the chart. And then if it's caused, the cause is either impersonal, which means it's an event, or it's personal, which means it's a person, right? So there you have this sophisticated chart. It's a series of dilemmas. If you are listening and you can't envision this, go to the YouTube channel, the Maven YouTube channel, find this section of the video, and you can look at the chart I've drawn here. But what we have now is a series of dilemmas, and of course, what I'm going to do is argue that the universe exists, that it has a beginning, that the beginning is caused, and that the cause is personal. So we have a personal cause of the beginning of the universe. What is that? Well, that's God, right? The only candidate for that is God when we start looking at this. So, universe exists. All right, we agree there. Okay, did it have a beginning or no beginning? Well, science seems to indicate it had a beginning. Two pieces of scientific evidence. Big Bang cosmology, which the implication is that all time-space matter has an absolute beginning. The second law of thermodynamics tells us that the universe is kind of winding down. All the usable energy will be used up, and eventually the universe will suffer a heat death. It'll be frozen over. Well, it hasn't frozen over yet, but if the universe didn't have a beginning and it was eternal, it was infinite, we would have enough time for the universe to suffer a heat death. And so there's a couple scientific reasons there that the universe had a beginning. There's also some philosophical reasons. One would be that it's impossible for the past to be eternal, or for it to infinitely regress into the past, because if that's the case, we'd never be at this present moment, right? You got to have a beginning point to arrive at the present moment. So there's powerful reasons to think that the universe had a beginning. And so if the universe had a beginning, was it caused or uncaused? Well, we know that just from experience and from scientific research that things don't pop into existence uncaused out of nothing. Like, why don't we see rabbits and Diet Cokes and cars and houses popping into existence out of nothing? We know that if there is some effect, there's always a cause. Like, for instance, if you heard a bang outside your house and your kid said, Mom, Dad, what's that? And you said, oh, it's a bang. And they said, well, what caused it? You said, nothing, that bang probably banged itself. Your kids wouldn't believe you, right? Because we know that every effect needs a cause. And if things just popped into existence out of nothing, there was no cause to these things, that would undermine the entire enterprise of science. So it's just common sense to think that some effect, like a beginning of a universe, needs a cause. And so we got a cause at the beginning of the universe right there. All right, is it personal or impersonal? Well, this is where you have two kinds of causes: impersonal or event causation, or person causation, meaning persons cause things. Why couldn't the beginning of the universe be just caused by another event? Well, because then that event that was the cause of the beginning of the universe would now become the beginning of the universe. You just push the problem back one, and you can't have this regressing infinitely into the past. Or you get that problem of an infinite regress that you could never cross over. It's kind of like, if you thought of an analogy here, like if you had students lined up in chairs and you had, each student stand up one after the other. Well, would you get to the last student? You would. Let's say you had 10 students and the first student stands up, and then once the first student stands up, then the second can stand up, and on and on and on until you get to the 10th student. Do you have confidence that you're going to get to the 10th student standing up? Absolutely, because you have a finite amount of chairs. What if we added 1,000 chairs to that? Yeah, we'd still get to that last student. But what if you added an infinite amount of chairs? Would you ever get to that last student standing up? No, because you cannot complete an infinite amount of events like that. So what that tells us is the first event can't be another event, because then your events need causes. All events have causes. So then that only gives you one other option in terms of how things are caused: by persons, right? I'm a person. I just raised my right arm. What caused that? There was no event that caused that. It was me as a person with free agency, with free will, being able to do that on my own. And so persons can cause things. Persons can cause other events. I could knock over this mic, and the event of the mic falling down would be me causing that. And if a impersonal cause is not available to us, the only other option is a personal cause. But of course, what would that personal cause be like? It would have to be spaceless, because at the beginning of the universe, all space comes into existence. It would have to be timeless, because all time comes into existence. It would have to be immaterial or matterless, because matter comes into existence. It would have to be powerful. Seems like it would have to be intelligent, knowing the laws of physics and chemistry. So you got a timeless, spaceless, immaterial, powerful, intelligent person. You got any candidates for that? There's only one I can think of. That's God. Mm-hmm. And that's just a kind of a quick way. We just gave an argument for God's existence. I think it's a strong, powerful argument for God's existence. It gives us good reason to think that God is really out there.
And so just to be clear, you're making an argument for the existence of a God that has these characteristics. You're not actually making an argument for Jesus, like the whole Christian story. Just to be clear, this is an argument just that it's reasonable to believe that the universe had a beginning. It seems to be caused, and it seems also to be personal.
Yeah, this is where we would say, so what we're doing is what's called natural theology, kind of looking at Romans 1, the natural world gives us knowledge about God. So we are doing natural theology versus, this is general revelation. It's available to all of us, versus special revelation, which is found in the Bible. Mm-hmm. And natural revelation, general revelation, only gets us so much information about God. Mm-hmm. But it gets us quite a bit, right? A timeless, spaceless, immaterial, powerful, intelligent God. And there's reason to, other arguments will give us more information, that he's personal, that he's moral. So that doesn't quite get us to the God of the Bible, but it definitely, we're heading in that direction. This eliminates deism, that there's some impersonal force out there just kind of wound things up. When we take these arguments together and say, yeah, it seems like this is a personal being. This is a moral being. In fact, that would be a second argument. The moral argument is a powerful argument. And it starts with an obvious truth. Just take one obvious moral truth. It's wrong to torture babies for fun. Or it is wrong. I'm not saying
that's such a weird one.
Well, you use that one.
Yes, it's so obvious.
It should be obvious.
Seems so torturing babies.
Yeah. Or just take, it's wrong to murder innocent people.
Yes.
It's wrong to practice racism against your, neighbor. Pick any obvious moral truth. Yeah. And so the question is, if you have an obvious moral truth, an objective moral law, what best explains that? Well, laws only come from lawgivers. And so many of the arguments for God's existence they're common sense, right? Beginnings have beginners. Moral laws have lawgivers. Design implies a designer. These kinds of things. Mind and consciousness requires a mind to create that, to produce that.
Okay, so can I give the pushback or the one thing our kids have said at different times when they were young or when we were just talking to them about this? I mean, the number one thing that the kids will say is, okay, but who made God? Or when did God, or, I know our kids have asked, when did God, when was God born? Basically, when did God start?
Yeah.
And so this idea about the universe exists, so God exists, when was God's beginning? So just address that.
Yeah, that's the big objection.
Because kids will often ask that, okay, the universe exists. Okay, but yeah, so when did God start?
God made the universe, so who made God?
Yes.
Well, this is where we would want to clarify in the argument. The argument does not assume that everything needs a beginning. The premise in the argument is whatever begins to exist needs a cause. So whatever begins to exist, anything that has a beginning needs a cause. God does not have a beginning. He is the uncaused cause. He is eternal. This is what it means to be eternal. You have always existed. And that is that's our definition of God. So when someone asks who made God, it actually is committing a logical fallacy. It's called a category fallacy. It's when you are asking the wrong question of something in a particular category. Because God is in the category of unmakeable things or eternal things. So it's like asking, hey, who made that unmakeable thing? Right? That's not a good question. And there's other examples of this. You could say, how long is the taste of an orange? What do you mean? Well, taste isn't measurable in inches or feet, right? So that's a bad question. It's the wrong category. Taste isn't measurable like that. So that's a category fallacy. In the same way, God doesn't have a beginner. He doesn't have a creator. No one made God because he's always existed. Now, some atheists will say, oh, that's cheating. Why couldn't the universe be eternal? Well, number one, we already gave an argument against that. You can't have an infinite regress of events into the past. So there's a philosophical argument against that. Number two, it's not cheating because everybody needs something that is uncaused in their worldview that explains everything else. Everyone's going to have to do that. So what the atheists did is just said, well, it's the world. Okay, so you're admitting you have to have something that's uncaused and eternal. And, the Christian has this uncaused eternal God. Now, the question is, what's the evidence point to? And the evidence does not lead us to conclude the universe is eternal. And this is actually one thing where you see scientists in the 19th and 20th century resisting Big Bang cosmology because of the implications. Einstein resisted this. And so you have the
implications being that
there's an absolute beginning to
yeah.
space-time
yeah.
and matter. And so you have evidence. So we're not just assuming this. We're not making what's called a God of the gaps argument, where we have a gap in knowledge and we just say, oh, let's plug God in there because we don't have any explanation. No, actually things point to God. And so no one made God. He's the uncreated creator. He is an unmakeable thing. He has always existed. He's eternal. And so everyone's got to have something that's eternal. What's the best candidate? I think God is. Your other option is that you think something comes from nothing. If you don't want to, hold to some eternal cause, some uncaused cause, well, then your other option is the universe popped into existence out of nothing. And that is against all the evidence. And I think it's completely irrational. Things don't come into existence out of nothing. Nothing causes nothing.
Yeah.
So that's how I think we would answer that one.
Yeah, and I think for kids, like I remember saying to one of our kids, it's hard for us to comprehend in some ways about a God who, for example, is outside of time, because we're stuck in time. And so I remember saying to one of the kids, it's hard to think, but we need something or someone that started time. And so God is outside of that, but we're inside of it. And so it's hard to think about.
There's debate now amongst theologians of whether God is still outside of time or whether with the creation of time he enters time. But before he creates the world, he's timeless. These even though these things may be hard to fully wrap your mind around, I'd say two things. Number one, that doesn't make them true or false. And number two, you can wrap more of your mind around these things by studying them and learning them over time. You can grow in your understanding. Yeah. And so
and kids can too.
Absolutely. Yeah. So don't sit there and think, oh, this is too hard. It's like anything, like we tell our kids, practice. Practice. The more that you explain this to your kids, the more you read about it yourself, the stronger your beliefs will become, and you will have more confidence yourself that God is real, which we as parents need for the difficult times we face. When things are getting rough and we maybe begin to question God, we can fall back on the evidence we have. I can't deny God's existence. No matter how difficult things get, there's just way too much evidence that I know of now and it just provides you an anchor for those difficult times, and it can provide an anchor for your kids. So what we try to do is just to kind of model a little bit that, look, you don't have to be an expert to explain that. And here's a little very helpful chart, a helpful visual for students to see. This is just one of a dozen solid arguments for God's existence. So let's talk about some more practical things that we can do. I think you've already mentioned one, and I want to just highlight it again. Get your kids into the natural world. Take them on hikes, go camping, go visit beautiful places, and then narrate for your kids. Narrate for them. Look at the grandeur of this world that we live in. Read to them Psalm 19 when you're at the top of a waterfall. You've just finished a mile hike. You're at the top of the waterfall, and look up in the sky. Look at the world around you and say, recite Psalm 19:1. The heavens are telling of the glory of God. Guys, everything around us, the birds singing, the babbling, river, the rush of the waterfall. All of this is speaking about God.
Yeah.
It's pouring forth speech.
Yeah, you've been good when we've been on road trips too, of especially times where we're driving through beautiful scenery, to put on worship music, and particularly worship songs that are reflecting on God as creator and his creation. And so just doing those things really can help. I mean, like we talked about, teach our kids theology, but help to point them to what Romans talks about, what's obvious, what we can see with our own eyes. Even our 3-year-olds, our 13-year-olds, all of us can see and experience that truth.
And you're doing it as you go.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just as you're living life.
Yeah.
And this is just really practical. And then it's something that you can just incorporate as you live life with your kids. So I think that's the first one.
Okay. So what about, as parents, the Kalam cosmological argument, I first learned that at Biola as a new Christian college student. I remember learning that argument. But okay, let's maybe point to some good resources on learning themselves and then learning how to articulate that too.
Yeah, okay. So I think 2 good resources here. Number 1 is this book from our good friend Natasha Crane. It's called Talking with Your Kids About God. And Natasha is a mom. She's a smart woman. She doesn't have formal training in apologetics. And I think that is to her credit because she's done the hard work. She knows what she's talking about, but she's also able to translate. Mm-hmm. And so what she's done is she's written this book. It's subtitled 30 Conversations Every Christian Parent Must Have. And what she does is she outlines some of the different evidences for God's existence in a way that's accessible, that parents, without any formal theological training, can read this and then turn around and explain it to their kids. So if you're looking for a book, get Talking with Your Kids About God. She's written additional books as well. She's got Talking with your Kids About Jesus. There's a book, How to Keep Your Kids on God's Side. So she's done some good stuff in translating. Mm-hmm. Secondly, of course, a lot of our kids are watching videos. They're on YouTube. And so capitalize on that. Go to YouTube and you can search for a couple things. Number 1, go to Maven's YouTube channel, or just do a search for the following terms. My name, Brett Kunkel, and then Christian and atheist debate morality. And that is a conversation with me and an atheist friend of mine, David, and we're talking about the nature of morality, and we're talking about whether it's objective or subjective, because if there are objective moral truths, this points to a moral lawgiver. It's an argument for God's existence. And so you can see him and I dialoguing back and forth on this issue and how I'm at the end going to kind of point to why this matters and how it can be an argument for God's existence. And that's good because it's a conversation. It's going back and forth. You can see how this thing works out in a real life conversation.
So parents can watch it, but also like junior high school students would definitely be able to follow along.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. And then also on YouTube, do a search on YouTube for Reasonable Faith animated videos.
I love these.
And Reasonable Faith is a great ministry. Mm-hmm. William Lane Craig, world-class philosopher, apologist, very influential, just a courageous man, brilliant man. But his organization, Reasonable Faith, is this wonderful apologetics organization that's equipping the church. And they've put together these animated videos, which are not cheesy. They're not like Christian cheesy videos. They're well done, and they go through different arguments for Christianity. And I think like the first 5 videos are different arguments for God's existence. And one of them is the Kalam cosmological argument. Watch that video with your kid. Have your kid watch that video. And not just once, like 10 times to really learn the argument. And again, practice makes perfect. And so the first time your kid watches it, ask them, okay, now explain that to me. And when they stumble over it, go, okay, let's watch it again. All right, now explain it to me until they can articulate it. And these are well done videos. And
they're videos we've watched with our kids. So,
we've watched these with our kids.
They're really good.
Yeah, so those are some resources, the books and the videos, that will give you plenty in terms of helping your kids come to discover the evidence for God's existence. If you've got a high schooler and you want to get a little more sophisticated, or you got some really sharp middle schoolers or junior hires, you could go onto YouTube and find a William Lane Craig debate where he has debated just a ton of atheists, and Craig is he's brilliant, and he's very articulate, and you could go and just do a search for William Lane Craig debates atheist and find a number of debates and watch a debate, get to hear both sides, and then how they respond to each other, and watch something like that with your kid.
Yeah, and the good thing about watching a video is that you can pause it and just even listen to their opening arguments and then pause it and think through it yourself, or talk about it with your high schooler.
Narrate it to your kid.
Say, okay, what arguments did they make? So I like watching a debate, especially a recorded one, because you can pause it and say, okay, did you understand what he was saying there? And okay, rewind it, rewind it's an old term.
Yeah.
Play it, turn it back. Yourself. Yes. Anyway, so
and you can pause it, like say an atheist gives his opening argument, you can pause it and say, before you hear Craig's response, you can say, how would you respond to this, guys? And let them struggle with it a little bit, and then hear a trained Christian apologist and philosopher then respond. Yeah. And then there's one more resource on YouTube. Again, if you type in my name, Brett Kunkel, and then type in with that atheist role play, you can see me role playing an atheist with Christian students and see how they respond, how well they do. That's something, again, you can pause and say, hey, all right, when he said this in the role play, how would you respond? And then listen to the student's response. So those are really practical resources. And think about what we said about belief, right? There's the content, the truth of it, who God is, what he's like, all of that stuff. The reasons really get to the strength of belief. And so we're giving evidence and reasons to build the confidence our young people have, so that their belief really becomes knowledge for them. But then we also mentioned centrality, and this is now looking at the implications. And I think this is the other part of the discussion with our young people. Okay, yeah, you believe that God exists, you have good reason to believe that God exists. Well, what role does God play in our lives? And this is where we need to talk about things like, hey, life seems to be fundamentally absurd if there is no God. Meaning there is no transcendent or objective meaning to all of this. Why give your life to any larger purpose if there is no God? Because if there is no God, well, then who seems to determine things? Who determines the purpose of life? You do, for yourself. It's not an objective meaning. It's not that God has given us objective, transcendent meaning. And at the end of the day, it's just you creating your purpose, and that person creating. Everyone gets to create their own purpose. And so there's no transcendent meaning. Life turns out to be fundamentally absurd. And we just do whatever we want. Right. And so this is one of the implications if there is no God. If there is a God, then, and that God is communicated to us, he would be the source of meaning and purpose. That isn't just purpose for me or you, it's the purpose of all humanity. And this gives us now purpose to live for it. And think about how purpose and meaning provides hope in life. Right? We're no longer in a hopeless situation. This isn't just some cold, dark universe that popped into existence out of nothing, or had no cause, or no one was behind it, and we're a random accident. No, there's a purposeful, intelligent creator who's personal, who cares about us, and who has infused this world with meaning as he's created us. And there's hope that, this world is broken because of our sin, but there's hope that he's going to restore all things. And so you have that aspect of it. Morality. Morality is so practical, right? How do we live this life? Well, if God is real, this should inform, and he's the source of morality, this should inform how we live life. We should be looking to him for direction. And we don't have to try and figure this out on our own. You're not lost morally. There's a moral compass. There's scripture. There's God's direction. And so we have objective morality that we can rely upon. And then you have the idea of redemption and forgiveness. We make mistakes. We feel guilty because we are guilty. What brings hope in that situation when you feel horrible about yourself and you feel shame? Well, there's a God who loves you, is actually taking care of this problem. This is a result of sin, and he's revealed himself in Christ. So all of these things are just implications of why the idea of God, the belief in God, should also be central to our life, because it impacts all of life. It gives us meaning and morality, and it gives us purpose and hope, and it offers us redemption. And, we are new creations in Christ now. It gives us a design so that we can then flourish. If we follow God's design plan, we can flourish. And so, that's just a quick overview of why this belief is so central. And so what we need to narrate and articulate for our kids is how God is at the center of all of life. Not only do we believe in him, but he's central.
Yeah, helping narrate, like you said, the implications, I think is so good. Helping our kids to see the world around us, and when we see brokenness, helping them to connect how that fits into our worldview.
Yeah.
That bad things that happen, flourishing that happens, these all fit into the Christian worldview, and helping our kids see that. As of course, when they're little, narrating it, but the more we narrate, the more they're going to start to see it as they get older, helps, again, to bring that needed justification, that needed coherence that they need for the truth of the Christian faith.
Yeah, and then God is no longer in the background of their lives. Mm-hmm. He now becomes front and center.
Maven exists to help the next generation know truth, pursue goodness, and create beauty for the cause of Christ. To find out more, check out maventruth.com.